Let's get started with today's story. When I first married Emily, everything looked perfect. We were young and in love, and from the outside we seemed like the ideal couple. But soon, cracks began to appear, and I couldn't ignore them. At first, Emily seemed supportive as I worked long hours to build a future for us. But soon, her behavior started to drain me. She would take large sums of money from our joint account without explanation, leaving me struggling to make ends meet. When I confronted her, she'd accuse me of not earning enough, making me feel like my efforts were always falling short. The emotional toll was even worse. She stopped showing interest in anything we once enjoyed. Our date nights turned into obligations, and she spent most of her time in bed, claiming she was too tired. I stopped trying to plan activities as it seemed pointless. What hurt the most were the accusations. She claimed I was keeping our son away from her, despite her lack of interest in spending time with him. I began to feel like I was the problem in every situation, no matter what I did. The emotional distance between us grew. Emily began spending nights away from home, claiming she was staying with friends, but when I asked about it, she would shut me down or change the subject. I realized I could no longer trust her. The love I once had for her faded, and resentment took its place. I tried to protect our son, but he could see the tension too. He was confused and hurt, and I couldn't do anything to fix it. I suggested going to therapy, but she wasn't interested. She seemed content in her own world, a world that no longer included me. That's when I knew our marriage was broken. Eventually, Emily told me she was leaving for someone else. There was a mix of fear and relief, fear of the unknown, and relief that the constant tension was finally ending. The moment she left, I realized how much I'd been holding on to something that was already gone. Our marriage had been emotionally dead for some time, and I had just been too exhausted to accept it. After Emily left, everything felt like a blur. She filed for divorce, and the whole process felt surreal. I didn't know what to expect, but a part of me was relieved. The weight of living in a broken marriage had finally been lifted, but the unknowns of life after divorce were daunting. I wasn't sure how things would unfold, but I knew that I had to fight for my peace and sanity. The first obstacle came with the paperwork. Emily's lawyer made mistake after mistake, with incorrect names, dates, and even mistakes about our child's details and assets. It felt like the whole process was dragging on because of these errors. But as frustrating as it was, I saw it as an opportunity. While the divorce dragged on, I had more time to prepare for what was ahead. The court dates became an endless loop of delays. Eventually, I spoke up, pointing out how her lawyer's incompetence was holding everything up. That worked in my favor, as I avoided having to pay for the extended legal fees. It felt like a small victory in the midst of a situation that was far from ideal. Eventually, the divorce was finalized. Emily kept the house from the divorce and got custody of our son. She moved in with the man she had left me for, but I later found out he was abusive. For the first time, I felt a pang of sympathy for her. However, it didn't change the fact that she was gone, and I needed to focus on rebuilding my life. I took control of my finances after the divorce, changing passwords and securing accounts. No more surprises or financial mismanagement. I'd learned from the mistakes of our marriage. Meanwhile, Emily was left to figure things out on her own. I didn't want to be the one to support her anymore. As hard as it was, the divorce felt like the beginning of a new chapter. It was clear to me now that our marriage had been a draining cycle of emotional manipulation and financial strain. I just had to keep moving forward step by step. After the divorce, I started to feel a sense of freedom I hadn't experienced in years. Things were far from perfect, but they were better than living in the constant chaos of my marriage. One unexpected turn came when Emily, failing to keep up with mortgage payments, caused our house to fall into arrears. A few months after the divorce, I received a call from her uncle. The bank was ready to repossess the house, and he asked me if I'd be interested in buying it. At first, I was hesitant, but then I saw the opportunity. I offered to purchase the house from him. To my surprise, the deal went through. It felt like a bizarre twist of fate, but owning the house turned out to be a good decision. Not only did it offer me financial stability, but it gave me a space to rebuild. As time passed, I focused on myself. I started exercising, lost some weight, and even received a promotion at work. I was starting to rediscover who I was outside of my marriage. Dating became a possibility again, and though I didn't rush into anything serious, I enjoyed meeting new people and feeling like myself again. This was my time. The house, the new opportunities, and the personal growth were all signs that I was moving in the right direction. Life after divorce had its challenges, but it was also full of unexpected rewards. A year after the divorce, when things were finally starting to feel like they were falling into place, Emily came back into the picture. I wasn't expecting it, but one evening, out of the blue, I received a message from her. My heart sank when I saw her name on the screen. It had been so long, and I had worked so hard to move on, but there she was, forcing her way into my life again. "Brad, can we talk?" it read. The message was simple enough, but the weight of it felt much heavier than it should have been. I hesitated for a moment before replying, unsure of what her intentions were. "What do you need, Emily?" I typed back, trying to keep my emotions in check. She responded almost immediately, asking if we could meet in person. At first, I told myself I didn't want to entertain any more of her manipulations. But something inside me, something deep, something that hadn't fully let go of our past, nudged me to agree. I wanted closure. I wanted to hear her side of things. When we met at the cafe the next day, she looked different. She had lost some weight, and her eyes no longer carried the same hardness they once had. There was an air of vulnerability about her that I hadn't seen before. She greeted me with a tentative smile, as if testing the waters. "Hi, Brad," she said, her voice softer than I remembered. I nodded, trying not to let my guard down. "Hi, Emily. What's going on?" Her smile faded as she sat down across from me. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about what happened," she started, her eyes searching mine for some sign that I might still care. "I know things ended badly, but I still think we can work it out. I've changed, Brad. I want to raise our child together, and I think we should try again, for the sake of the family." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't that I hadn't thought about the possibility of reconciliation. It was that I had already moved on. I had spent so much time grieving the loss of our relationship, and now that I had found peace in my own life, she wanted to drag me back into the chaos. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized that nothing had changed. She was still the same person who had hurt me, betrayed me, and pushed me to the brink of breaking. The only difference now was that she was trying to manipulate me with guilt, pretending to have turned over a new leaf when it was clear to me that her motivations were rooted in something far more self-serving. "Emily," I said, my voice firm but calm, "I've moved on. I'm not interested in getting back together. What we had is over, and I'm okay with that." Her face fell, but she wasn't done. "I don't think you understand. I'm not asking for much. Just for me to come back home, for us to be a family again. I'll even pay you back the money I owe you if we try to make this work. Isn't that worth it?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was offering to pay me back the money, like it was some sort of deal to fix everything, as if I could be bought. "I'm not doing this," I replied, shaking my head. "This isn't about money or about trying to make things work. You hurt me, Emily. You lied, you cheated, you took everything from me, and now you want to waltz back into my life like nothing happened? No, I won't be part of your game anymore." Her eyes darkened and she took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. I could tell she was disappointed, but I couldn't let that stop me. I had been too weak for too long, and I wasn't going to fall for her tricks again. She tried to push me further, talking about the things we could fix together, but I stood my ground. "No, Emily, this is over. And if you really care about our child, you need to stop using me as your emotional crutch. I'm not the answer to whatever problem you're going through." With that, I stood up, feeling a sense of finality settle over me. It wasn't easy, but I walked out of that cafe, leaving her there to deal with her own consequences. After that meeting with Emily, I thought that would be the end of it. I'd made it clear I wasn't interested in reopening old wounds, and I figured she would accept it and move on. But that's not how things worked with Emily. For the next few weeks, I felt like I was constantly looking over my shoulder, bracing myself for the next time she would try to manipulate me or play the victim. But what surprised me most was her silence. I wasn't hearing from her anymore. No more calls, no more messages. It was almost like she had given up. Perhaps for the first time in her life, she had accepted that I wouldn't cave to her demands. I, on the other hand, was moving forward. It wasn't easy. No one really talks about how exhausting it is to rebuild yourself after something as traumatic as a divorce, but I was doing it. Slowly but surely, I was reclaiming my life. And that included putting myself back out there, even if it felt like a huge risk. That's when I met Michelle. We met through mutual friends at a gathering one night. She was easy to talk to, with a sense of humor that made me feel comfortable right away. She wasn't looking for anything complicated, just someone to hang out with, share a few laughs, and enjoy life. At first I thought maybe I was rushing things, but something about her felt right. She wasn't like Emily. She didn't have any emotional baggage she was trying to unload on me, nor did she want anything from me. It was just a simple connection. We started seeing each other regularly. It wasn't serious at first. I didn't want to rush into anything. But as time went on, I found myself looking forward to our time together. We would go on weekend trips, try out new restaurants, and spend hours talking about everything and nothing. I hadn't realized how much I had missed real companionship until Michelle came into my life. But of course, Emily couldn't stay away forever. It was a Saturday afternoon when I got the first message from her. I had just finished a morning hike with Michelle and was getting ready to relax for the day when my phone buzzed. I recognized the number immediately. It was Emily. "Brad, I see you've moved on. Are you happy now? Is she making you happy?" The message was cold, but there was an unmistakable tone of bitterness in her words. I didn't respond right away. I just stared at the screen, feeling the old resentment bubble up. I could feel the weight of her jealousy and her need for control, and it was maddening. But this time, I was different. I had changed. I showed Michelle the message, and she was supportive as always. "You don't owe her anything," she said, squeezing my hand. "You've worked hard to get to this point. Don't let her pull you back into her mess." Michelle's words rang true, and I knew she was right. So instead of responding with anger or frustration, I simply blocked Emily's number. I wasn't going to let her disrupt the peace I had fought so hard to create. But the following week, Emily escalated things. She showed up at my door. It was early on a Monday morning. I was sitting at the kitchen table sipping my coffee when I heard a knock. At first I didn't think much of it, but when I opened the door and saw her standing there, my heart sank. "What do you want, Emily?" I asked, my voice flat. She didn't waste any time. "I've seen you with her," she said, her tone sharp. "I know what you're doing. You think you can just forget about me and move on with someone else, don't you?" I tried to stay calm, but the old anger crept back in. "Emily, we're done. I've moved on. I don't owe you any explanations, and I sure as hell don't owe you an apology." She took a step closer, as if she thought proximity would somehow force me to reconsider. "You're not the person I thought you were, Brad. You used to love me." I shook my head. "What I used to feel doesn't matter anymore. The person you were back then is not who you are now. You lied, you cheated, you destroyed everything we had. There's nothing left to save." The silence that followed was deafening. For a moment I thought she might break down, that the tears would start flowing, but she didn't cry. Instead, she stood there, her face hardening. "I hope you know what you're doing, Brad," she said quietly, her voice laced with venom. "You'll regret this." With that, she turned and walked away, not looking back. I closed the door behind me and leaned against it, my chest tight. I had been prepared for something like this, but it didn't make it any easier to deal with. I stayed quiet about the encounter, not wanting to give Emily the satisfaction of knowing it had affected me. Michelle knew I had been visited, and she just held me for a moment, letting me feel the safety of her presence. "You're not alone anymore," she whispered. And in that moment, I knew she was right. After Emily's visit, I felt relieved, like a weight had lifted. Healing wasn't instant, but with Michelle, everything felt different. No manipulation, just a genuine connection. Reflecting on my past with Emily, I realized I had sacrificed my happiness trying to fix what couldn't be saved. Walking away was the best decision. To move forward, I asked Michelle to move in with me, into the house I once shared with Emily, turning it into a symbol of my new beginning. Michelle was supportive, and together, we made it ours. One evening, she said, "You're finally where you belong." She was right. I had let go and found peace. Michelle and I grew closer, building a healthy, fulfilling relationship free from manipulation. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Emily still tried to contact me, but I stopped responding, setting boundaries. Her problems weren't mine to solve anymore. Michelle's constant support reminded me how far I'd come. "You've really changed," she said one evening. "I have," I agreed. "I've learned to take control of my own happiness." With Michelle by my side, I finally felt at peace. The past no longer defined me. I was ready for whatever the future held. Thank you for watching.